I broke up with him because he never apologized for hurting me, saying, "It's your fault for feeling that way." Now, I wonder if he just doesn't know how to apologize as his family didn't model it for him. Should I reach out to rekindle the bond we had? To begin, it was our first relationship for both of us. We live in a developing country. I, 22 female, am seeking advice on how to go about rekindling the relationship and whether he, 20 male, still wants to work on it again. You may say don't, if you genuinely believe there is no way to save this, but I have held that belief for 2 months before realizing my own faults. I genuinely liked this guy, and our personalities and interests complemented each other in a harmonious manner that felt right. He was typically tender, warm, and bright, and I truly appreciated those qualities in him. I usually planned our dates and he went along with them. I initiated activities and he commented on them. He is not particularly fond of texting, messaging applications, or even Discord, but he would make an exception for me and his parental figures. He is considerably more introverted than I am, anxious and self-conscious about being seen in public, which affects our public displays of affection. He struggles to express his opinions to the people around him effectively. This may provide important context about his general demeanor. We were together for 6 months before I requested some space. This is not the breakup itself. I will explain later. I felt angry after an incident in which he did not apologize or acknowledge that he hurt my feelings, and this was not the first time he had done so. Everything that led to the breakups. In January, I expressed that it seemed like he was starting to withdraw. He was spending less time with me, canceling plans, texting me less frequently, and I reiterated that words of validation are important to me. It was not meant to be a significant issue. I understand that we are both inexperienced when it comes to being responsible for each other's emotional well-being. We discussed it twice, but he ended up saying something like, "It is your fault for feeling that way." He kept dismissing my concerns, and I could not explain why this manner of communication was harmful. In a moment of frustration, I gave up and apologized for not considering that he did not mean it that way when I mentioned what he had said the next time we spoke. I suggested that we would compromise. Since he was not accustomed to texting, how about we simply ask each other to call? I do not remember him saying sorry or my bad or anything of that nature. He essentially responded, "Yeah, I mean you have a point, and I do not blame you for feeling that way." Numerous minor incidents occurred between that time and the final straw, culminating in the thought that he did not see how much all of this was hurting me and had not taken responsibility for it or fully acknowledged it. After that, things were fine for a while until the final straw. We were supposed to go somewhere one Friday, but he backed out. I was scheduled to visit him 2 days later, but he only mentioned that he was not home when I had to cancel due to heavy rain. The next day, I asked if he could come to me. He considered it but decided he could not, so we agreed to a call that evening. After sunset, he told me he needed to attend a meeting which lasted for 8 hours. I was unaware of this. I waited 8 hours since his last message. When the meeting finally ended, I was extremely frustrated by the entire week and had told him 2 hours prior to simply go to sleep. He eventually messaged me back. In a moment of anger, I said I felt he loved me more when he was unconscious. He merely replied, "Then do not call, I guess." We did not message each other the next day, and I requested space the day after that when I saw him in public and felt pure resentment towards him. That feeling persisted past February 14. However, I threw a crocheted flower his way in a sudden, non-intentional gesture due to the way I felt. At this stage, he still had not apologized for anything. Months later, I learned he gave that flower to a mutual friend, stating he had no use for it. The first conversation again. The space lasted an entire month throughout February. I kept telling him we should talk, that space is not meant to last forever, but he consistently left me on read. The last time I asked to talk, I wondered if he was leaving me on read because he could not think of what to say, a frequent occurrence with him whenever we texted, or if he was sulking. He admitted to both. Eventually, he was the one to ask us to talk. No third parties, no pressure, just the two of us. Finally, I thought he would take responsibility for the immature way he had handled things. The way he looked at me made it seem like someone truly in love. It was the first time I ever thought, God, this guy really loves me. Whenever our eyes met, that thought flashed in my mind. What a sappy sentiment indeed. But in that moment, I thought he was finally going to understand my perspective. We discussed the situation. I recounted the events that had transpired and how they made me feel. He mentioned he had received advice from a friend on how to resolve this. Great, he is finally turning to people with experience. He then expressed regret that I had not known enough about him before we began this relationship. He stated that he was naturally cold and not always responsive, but assured me that there were other aspects of himself that were worth dating. At this point, I couldn't help but chuckle internally. It was obvious his friend had projected her own experiences onto him. That was not the main issue. I had literally just articulated my concerns, had I not? Firstly, he had not always behaved that way. He used to be warm, not distant. That was the person I had come to know and fell in love with. We had been in the talking stage for a good 4 to 6 months before we made things official. He consistently texted me and inquired about my well-being for nearly 9 months at that point. Had he misled himself into believing he had always been like this? After some back and forth, I pointed out that I had literally told him what to do. I even hinted at it. He apologized, that I did not know him well. He apologized for how I felt. I had already informed him how terrible that phrasing felt. He continued to apologize for things while making it all my fault. He took no responsibility at all. He already knew what the situation entailed. I told him he was exclusively placing the blame on me. I stood up and left him there babbling on the bench. Break up. 2 days later, I texted him to see if we could talk again. I had calmed down a bit. I was even feeling positive. Perhaps the information had finally sunk into his mind. Hey, he had tried last week, with a few significant setbacks. No, he simply stated verbatim, there is nothing more to be said. I sent him a series of messages, basically explaining that he had been entirely illogical whenever we failed to communicate openly. We had barely communicated thus far regarding this matter. The following day, I ended the relationship with him over text. The pain was incredibly unbearable, and I could not wait until I saw him again. All he said was, if that is what you believe is right, before following up with the fact that he did not regret our time together. I bombarded his phone, detailing how he continuously placed the blame on me, how he never took accountability for his own actions and only blamed my reactions to those actions. He never promised any change. No one who genuinely loves someone would make them feel guilty for wanting to resolve an issue, for wishing to mend a relationship, or for asking someone to change. God forbid someone actually apologizes for hurting another person. He never genuinely apologized until the very end. It has been a month since the breakup. We cannot really have complete no contact since he is classmates with my closest friends. I befriended them long before I began to approach him. Following the breakup, he distanced himself from them, stating they should never speak to him again unless it was strictly academic. It was quite sudden. They expressed that it was as if his entire personality had done a complete reversal. I do not regret the breakup. It was beneficial for me. The last months of that relationship were incredibly painful. The feeling of one's perspective not being acknowledged by the person you love the most is a novel experience for me. If he genuinely wanted to apologize, he would approach me again. I believed he never would if he truly cared for me. Why the change of hearts? After the breakup, many events transpired. Tensions rose in his household that his teenage niece shared with me. I recently learned that the people who raised them were not particularly healthy themselves. One of them struggled to apologize adequately, and the other took offense when I suggested that my ex could benefit from therapy, despite them claiming they were supposedly diagnosed and medicated themselves. This opened my eyes to the possibility that he genuinely had no example set for how to apologize. He did not truly grow up with a real mother or father figure who recognized him as their son. I researched this and found that individuals who struggle to take accountability often develop this trait due to a specific parenting style. The fact that he even attempted to improve might be a bizarre leap forward that just did not come across correctly, because he can be somewhat dense with information. I sincerely care for him. We had something special. In our country, we begin dating young and often marry in our 20s, so please do not dismiss this based on our ages. If there is room for improvement and he is genuinely willing to try, I am open to giving it another shot, even at the risk of heartbreak. If it works out, I would be overjoyed. If it does not, at least I will have made an effort to address it more maturely than before, where barely anyone communicated and I was left ruminating on how I would have handled it differently. I prefer to give individuals the benefit of the doubt, especially someone young. I do not want to be overly critical of how I managed my first relationship either. It was our first for both of us, after all. I will start establishing concrete boundaries and encourage him to seek therapy if it comes to that. How do I even approach him again about this? How do I propose this idea? What key points must I communicate to minimize the chances of us hurting each other to such an extent again, or for him to do so to someone else, regardless of whether we reconcile? TLDR. I ended the relationship when he was unable to apologize properly for hurting me. I learned more about him afterwards, revealing the possibility that he genuinely does not know how to apologize in a neurotypical manner. What do I say when I attempt to reconnect? Story 2. Happily married for over 20 years, yet an old flame reignites my curiosity. Do I keep my mouth shut to hope? I question while pondering a future we never had. Could a hypothetical reunion at 85 be worth exploring? Am I unfaithful for wondering? My wife, female 52 years old, and I, male 51 years old, are happily married and love each other deeply. We have been together for over 20 years, experiencing both highs and lows, but we have persevered through difficulties with a strong commitment to never divorce. We share similar backgrounds, former drinkers and addicts, strong Christian morals and ethics, striving to grow as individuals and valuing family among other things. Most of the challenges we have faced, particularly the most difficult ones, have been my responsibility. I struggled with pornography at the start of our marriage and dealt with other obsessions and addictions, such as video games, excessive screen and online time, and several other issues that may seem minor but are too complex to explain. I have hidden these struggles, and most of them eventually came to light, resulting in painful conversations. I have caused her a great deal of emotional strain over the years. While I often manage to come through, it is not without significant effort on my part. I have always found it difficult to maintain self-control, manage executive dysfunction, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and exercise self-discipline. In my early 20s, I made discipline a significant part of my life, which greatly impacted my personality and goals. I had dreams and was very idealistic. During those years, I began to struggle with depression, and after a challenging but rewarding period, which I am skipping for anonymity, I went through a transformative time that resulted in a loss of faith. I decisively turned away from my previous life and changed my group of friends, quickly finding myself experimenting with drugs and drinking significantly more. During that time, I met a girl who was a few years younger than I will refer to her as Hope. Hope and I were instantly attracted to one another and engaged in sexual intercourse on the very day we met, something neither of us had experienced before in that way. As time passed, we dated long distance for about a year, and halfway through we got engaged. During this period, I managed to achieve and maintain sobriety. She was incredibly beautiful and attractive to me. Our romantic life was electric and more passionate than anything I had ever experienced before or since. However, circumstances were unstable, and we ended the engagement and broke up. Even during this tumultuous time, I could not determine whether I was making the right choice. Would things have turned out differently had I moved to her location and married her? It was what she wanted, and I desired it too. I loved her deeply, and I have always held a special place for her in my heart, perhaps even of a different kind of love. But I was simply too uncertain and still trying to navigate my sobriety. I kept in touch with Hope for a while until it became evident that she was moving on and preparing to marry. At that point, I severed all ties because I did not want to interfere with her marriage. Fast forward, I struggled with other women until my addiction nearly took my life, which served as a severe wake-up call. I achieved sobriety the following day, rejoined Alcoholics Anonymous, and worked the 12 steps as if my life depended on it. I still believe it was a life-and-death situation. After a couple of years of sobriety, I got married, and now we have a joyful family. Over the years, I occasionally looked up old girlfriends out of curiosity, and my wife and I would discuss them with one another. One of them, whom I discovered about 3 to 4 years ago, died from a fentanyl overdose around 2010. We had a brief friendship and sexual relationship that ended when she ghosted me without any explanation. I never knew what had transpired until I saw her obituary. This revelation broke my heart, and my wife was aware. It was not a secret. When you are close to someone like that, it leaves a mark on you, whether love was involved or not, which, in our case, it was not. I also searched for Hope on social media over the years. She appeared to have a growing family and they seemed happy. I attempted to suppress thoughts of her, especially when my own marriage was facing challenges, but she has always lingered in the back of my mind as if I could not escape her. Approximately 5 to 6 years ago, I found myself unable to view her account and my searches yielded no results. Then some months ago, I noticed her reacting to one of my posts from a long time ago. I concealed the notification in an effort to ignore it and move on, but it bothered me. I attempted to access her account again, but to no avail. To summarize, I figured out how to see her updates and provided a reaction of my own without commenting. Eventually, I found the courage to send a private message, complimenting her on her lovely family and expressing my best wishes. A few days later, she responded and we began conversing again. I have not informed my wife. The last time I started communicating with a female high school friend, my wife nearly had a complete meltdown. During my conversations with Hope, I discovered that things were not as good as they appeared and she is no longer married. Details omitted for anonymity. However, something Hope mentioned reminded me of how special I was to her. I will never be unfaithful to my wife. Furthermore, Hope lives too far away for any temptation to arise, and that is a relief. I am committed to my marriage until one or both of us passes away, and I aspire to love my wife well. Now for my question, am I irrational for contemplating future possibilities if my wife were to pass before me? I love her and will care for her through sickness and health, so this is strictly hypothetical. Should I remain silent with Hope? I am tormented by the desire to understand if there is any hypothetical chance of being with her again, even if we are both 85 years old. Should I initiate a conversation with her? Am I being disloyal by simply thinking about or considering this? I cannot stop thinking about her. Additionally, I want to clarify that this is not some unfulfilled sexual fantasy. I have reached an age where I have accepted that my desires have diminished and that my body does not function as it once did. I have always wondered what I missed out on, and it seems that both of us have matured significantly. It has been about 25 years. Yet our connection felt unchanged, and I am eager to know more. To summarize, I have been happily married for over 20 years and would never divorce or cheat on my wife. A recent reconnection with my ex-fiancé online has left me contemplating whether I should openly discuss a hypothetical future possibility of rekindling our relationship. Should I keep this to myself or talk to her about it? I am curious if she shares the same sentiments, but do not know if it would be wise to ask.